David Neiwert is joining us, adding him to the stream. David, welcome to the show. It's great to see you.
Likewise, Julianna. How are you?
Well,
can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, it's good to have you.
Good.
I am well. I just want to dive right in here because I know your new book actually has theories to help us combat these alt-right conspiracists in our own lives. And I was talking earlier about how I was recently touched by visiting some long lost friends and family in upstate New York, where, economic conditions have been bad since NAFTA, since Reagan. It hasn't gotten much better up there. And they were spouting conspiracy theories that they had seen not only on the internet, but like right there on the news, on the Sinclair broadcasts, on the Fox TV. Anyway, when the leader of the free world continuously calls the news fake, an alternative facts guide his administration, it's no surprise that those conspiracy theories are on the rise. David Neiwert, if you're just getting here, make sense of it all in your new book, Red Pill, Blue Pill, where you dive into the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories. And God bless you for doing that. That is not the kind of work that everybody can do or would want to do or could stomach doing. So we appreciate that. You talk in the book about their appeal, who believes them, how they spread, with an eye to helping us all deal with these. You didn't call them nuts, but I'm going to call them slightly nuts. And I come from the left of the left, where there, conspiracy seems to have, there was a lot of conspiracy theorists on the left, and now it's the alt-right. Yeah. So let's get right into it, shall we?
Sure. Well, I mean, after I finished my last book, Alt America, basically I started, as I was going along in 2017 and 18 and 19, I started, really struggling with trying to understand why and how this was spreading and what was really enabling it, and really the underlying fuel for so much right-wing extremism, as well as, I should add, left-wing extremism, but right-wing extremism in particular is really fueled by these conspiracy theories. And not just the extremism, but mass killings. Almost every one of these mass killings that we can think of for the last 10, 15 years has been performed by somebody who has, who subscribes to these otherworldly conspiracy theories. And it's not that everybody who falls into conspiracism is going to become a mass killer, but
one is enough, dynamic. Really. One or two is really
yeah.
More than
well,
enough.
And when it keeps happening over and over, you start looking at the dynamic and understanding. I mean, the sort of endpoint of conspiracism is either moving out to the woods and getting yourself a cabin in Montana, or going on a mass killing. And these are, really incredibly toxic outcomes.
David, what are some of the most prominent conspiracy theories that are gripping the nation today? We've got QAnon. We've got the president yesterday saying that Joe Biden's molesting children. What? Tell me.
Well, that's out of QAnon. The whole thing with pedophilia and the theft of children is it's really straight out of QAnon, which of course was sort of derived from Pizzagate. But QAnon has the sort of dual function of not just being a particular set of theories about how Donald Trump is secretly trying to save us all, but it's also a sort of meta theory that absorbs all of these other conspiracy theories throughout history in a lot of ways. I mean, it involves the 9/11 conspiracy theory. It draws in all these others. So if you believe in these older conspiracy theories, and I'm talking even Protocols of the Seven Elders of Zion, then you are going to be under the QAnon rubric, or you fit within the QAnon rubric. And it underscores something that I try to explain in the book, that typically once you buy into the world of one of these conspiracy theories, pretty soon you are buying into all of them, or really a wide range of them. So,
we just recently learned from The Hill that the person who's supposed to be Q was unveiled. He was found in New Jersey. He's a guy. He's just some guy from New Jersey. Is that accurate? And what do you make of the fact that one guy from New Jersey can like start this whole revolution of crazy?
Wouldn't surprise me. Well, because the world is primed for it. We've got a whole world out there that has been preconditioned to fall into these kind of rabbit holes. It's, I mean, in a lot of regards, and look, I mean, you encountered it this weekend. And one of the reasons I wrote this book was that I think everybody I know knows someone who has fallen into these rabbit holes, who believes in these conspiracy theories. And it's incredibly frustrating because, of course, it frequently destroys the friendships, it disrupts families, it disrupts whole communities. And in the end, it disrupts the nation. And much the same dynamic. Because I think what's the underlying thing that's been going on is that we are in an epistemic crisis. We can't even agree on what's real and what's not. We can't agree on what comprises a fact and what doesn't. Because partly, and it's all because of these conspiracy theorists and people who are basically trying to have convinced large sections of the public that, you know, the media lies to you all the time. It's actually creating a false reality. And this is what red pilling is all about, you know, straight out of the Matrix, that, you know, you actually are living in a kind of Matrix-like society where you're being secretly controlled by
Gotcha. I was ready
by forces beyond all of our comprehension. And so when you take the red pill, suddenly you can see the reality, right?
David, you said we were being primed for a long time, and one of the things that I have thought is that capitalism is at the root fault here in some areas. Take, for example, the fact that the New York Times did lie us into a war not too many presidents ago. So people have stopped believing in the alternative in the media. They just kind of tossed out the entire New York Times. Jon Stewart's show, although I absolutely adore him, adore the show, for years, there was a pounding on how the media was just a bunch of crap. And then, so there's that side to it. Then there's the fact that, you know, lobbyists have infiltrated different parts of our government. So people don't really trust the CDC, and they don't necessarily trust that the medications that are being called safe have been tested properly. So there's, you know, there are reasons. And to me, it all points back to sort of capitalism. How can we get back to agreeing on some facts if the newspapers do lie us into wars, and we have a revolving door of lobbyists, you know, that are degrading our public institutions?
Sure. Well, right, and I think the root of a lot of this is that people don't trust the media for very good reasons, because the media has earned their distrust, or the media, you know, and you know,
what are we gonna do?
You know, ultimately, you know, at the root of what I see is at the root of this is, in many regards, is corporate ownership of media.
Yeah,
I think it ought to be outlawed, because the fourth estate is far too important an institution in our democracy to be left to the profit motive. I mean, really, ultimately, what's been if you look at the dynamic of what's been fueling these conspiracy theories and it's spread into the mainstream, is organs like Fox News, right-wing pundits like Rush Limbaugh and Michael Savage, who find these conspiracy theories, and as well as sort of the playing with the fake news thing, you know, well, you're fake news, I'm not, sort of thing.
I mean, we say that here.
Right.
We're like, everyone but me is fake. You know, everyone says that. Every single person says that.
I know. But ultimately, these people are, particularly Fox News is a representative of the corporate control of the media and its ability to manipulate information within that space, as well as to convince. I mean, basically, Fox News has been convincing half of America to hate the other half for the last 15 years. And so it shouldn't surprise any of us that have so many people feeling like we're on the brink of a civil war, because this is what's been happening. And let's be clear, Fox News does this for profit. It's actually very profitable to stir up hatred and fear and to stir up controversy, because that's their business model. And so they're constantly generating information that's false and propagating information that's false, and basically twisting everybody's worldview around to the point that, they really believe that the people on the left are trying to destroy America. And, I mean, I agree with you that it's in regard to
bumper sticker in my car because I live out in the middle of nowhere now. Really, I'm like, okay, I don't know if I can do this. Whenever I see someone with a Biden lawn sign, I'm like, yay! It's a risk.
Yeah. Oh, if you're out in Long Island, it's yeah.
I'm not in Long Island. Just my voice is in Long Island. That's my voice.
But I mean, if you go out there, you're going to be seeing it. And of course, I'm out here in the West, and we see plenty of it. It's outside of the cities. If you go into these ex-urban and rural areas in particular. So,
David,
it's really problematic.
We have some folks watching us live on Twitch. If you have a question that you want me to give to the guest, just type it into the stream chat and I will forward it. We're speaking with David Neiwert, absolute rock solid person to talk to, investigative journalist when it comes to Alt America. He wrote the book, Alt America, The Rise of the Radical Right in the Age of Trump. And you have the new book coming out, Red Pill, Blue Pill, an antidote to the conspiracy theories that are killing us. Let's talk about QAnon. I know we touched on it a little bit. What do you make of these politicians who are coming out and embracing, some of the QAnon rhetoric?
Well, some of them are just wholly QAnon fanatics. I mean, we've got the Senate candidate out here in Oregon, Joe Ray. I'm forgetting her last name, but anyway, she's running against Jeff Merkley.
What I used to say about Oregon
she's the Republican nominee. She won. She won the primary.
I used to live in Oregon in Portland, and I used to say it's like a little bit of California surrounded by a whole bunch of people who want you to get off their land. That was kind of my take on Oregon. No offense.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah. That's okay.
I mean,
that's
it's almost like
part of the
mind-blowing.
dynamic. Yeah. And one of the things that, and it's not just Oregon, of course. You have the woman in Georgia who won the nomination down there, and there are several others coming out of the woodwork. Look, QAnon, I mean, all of this conspiracism, and particularly the political conspiracism that we're seeing really welling up, the underlying dynamic is, once again, right-wing authoritarianism. And authoritarianism has this really incredibly powerful pull for people who want to start going down that path. And I mean, this is all about basically worshiping the glorious leader, Donald Trump. That's what QAnon is about.
We have some questions coming in from the chat. Marcus for Left Flank Vets says, can you ask about how many Democrats are being complicit in the rise by not fully utilizing their authority? And that's a great question. Goes to why aren't we seeing any Democrats being like, no, Joe Biden isn't molesting children and neither is Tom Hanks. And this is ridiculous. California's burning down. Can we just get some money over there? You know, why aren't Democrats? I haven't heard one Democrat stand up and say something about this.
Cowardly. I think they've been cowed by 15 years of Fox News.
That's how I felt when I was in my friend's house. And I was like, that's like 10 fucking Fox News talking points in a row. Like, how do you fight that?
Yeah, I don't know that you do. I mean, it depends.
But Democrats could. They have a platform where they could say something.
Yeah, it's not clear to me why. I mean, Julianna, I got to tell you, a lot of this is very similar to the sort of reaction that I got all during the Obama years. But I was, as you know, warning people repeatedly that the rise of right-wing extremism is a serious problem in this country, and we have to pay attention to it, or we're going to be awash in it very, very soon. And it was because I was seeing the response to the Obama administration and the absolute fear and loathing that his presidency brought up, particularly among people who are reactionary white people. And, you know, and I got to tell you, I felt like Democrats were like, well, we can't really go there because, you know, we don't want to inflame it and we don't really want to acknowledge it, because if we acknowledge it, then it'll like help make it reality. It's like the people that
That's ridiculous.
Well, yeah, but this is the same thing that I get when I constantly get this stuff when I'm reporting on right-wing extremists. Well, if you just ignore them, they would just go away. I mean, I get that all the time.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Just don't pay attention. Just pay attention to them. They just want attention, and you're going to, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been getting that since the 1990s. So. And honestly, I once fell for this myself in the late 70s when I was in Sandpoint, Idaho, and we had the Aryan nations moving into our neighborhood. And I was the editor of the little paper up there in the Panhandle.
Nazis, excuse my French. Oh, if you ignore it, it'll go away, because that's what history shows. That's ridiculous.
That was what we thought. Well, we just don't want to give them any attention because that's all they want. And we would just be helping them by writing about them. Well, within a few years, we didn't really have any choice in the matter because we were washing so many hate crimes, and as well as the violent rampage of the Order. I don't know if you remember those guys back in '84, but they were this murderous gang of neo-Nazi thugs who murdered a radio talk show host in Denver, and robbed a bunch of banks.
Wow!
And that was right out of this neck of the woods where we were going. Well, I think we'll not write about these guys. You know, well, guess what?
Right.
It wound up being a really bad idea, and I feel the same way. Even now, that people today are still going, well, if you just pretend they're not there, and this is certainly something I got all through the Obama years, and unfortunately, you know, a lot of this response is coming from the top. Think about how the Obama administration responded to the accusations in 2009 that it was targeting, that the DHS was targeting veterans by calling out the fact that right-wing extremists were going to be recruiting a lot of veterans. And, you know, they had a DHS bulletin that came out, and Fox News and Rush Limbaugh and all these people just went totally apeshit and made it a huge national thing. And the DHS secretary, Janet Napolitano, and the Obama administration, rather than standing up to this stuff and saying, no, this is not going to, you know, this is bullshit. You know, we stand behind this assessment 100% because it's accurate. And you're not going to back us down on this because right-wing extremism is a real problem. Instead, no, they buried the report. They gutted the DHS section that was monitoring right-wing extremism. And they basically did Fox News' bidding. And this is a pattern that we saw all through the Obama years, was that the Obama people would back down and be cowed by these people. And I mean, think of the Clive and Bundy standoff in Nevada in 2014, how the feds just totally backed down on that.
What do you make of what is the where's the intersection of sort of the evangelical religions and the alt-right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, yes, the intersection is authoritarianism. I mean, the underlying dynamic in both cases. Evangelicals are fundamentally religious authoritarians, and so this is something that just bleeds naturally right over into political authoritarianism. And Trump and his people have done a pretty masterful job of making that connection, because clearly the Trump people are not what I would call deeply religious.
Well, some of them are. They believe that he is the coming of the savior. I mean,
he was elected by God. They said that woman said in the clip you were showing.
Right. And they really think that.
Yeah.
And
no, they do. That's right, and that is that crossover between political and religious authoritarianism. We have to worship this guy because he was elected by God.
I was reading I think I was watching a piece by Steve Horn in the Real News Network where he broke that one of the police officers who shot Jacob Blake in the back 7 times was an adherent of, I don't know, one of these evangelical religions that actually says that you have to just believe that police are, the authority. If they're the authority, they get to do whatever they want. And they actually believe that. So it's the authoritarianism runs rampant here.
It really does. So, and I talk about the authoritarianism as part of the dynamic of conspiracy theories quite a bit in the book. I devoted a chapter to it. And at the end, I do offer some ideas on how people can handle this and can deal with it.
That was my next question. How can people who, if someone's fallen prey to these alt-right conspiracy theories, what's the blue pill toolkit? How can we help?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you got to one of the conclusions that I reached in writing this was that there are no magic wands that we can wave. There's no easy.
That is not very helpful.
Yeah. No quick solutions. It's actually going to be a really long, slow crawl out of this hole.
What does it include? I mean, we're trying to do it here, at least part of it.
I think most of it is actually in the cases of people who we know have been able to have had success in pulling people out of these rabbit holes. And that's, I tried to talk to as many of these folks as I could in putting the book together. And the thing that, one of the key things is that you're very unlikely to just be able to pull a stranger or somebody you just happen to meet in a bar or online out of these rabbit holes. Nothing you're going to say is going to be able to help. The only thing that actually does work is when you actually have a personal relationship with someone. Because ultimately the bottom line of what draws people into conspiracism is that they have personal needs that are being met by these things. And a lot of this involves really pulling people out of the rabbit hole, involves finding what those motives are, and then offering them alternatives that are legitimate, that work within the real world.
That some of the motives right now are people are just frightened. They can't get decent information about the coronavirus. They're not,
Yep.
there's no cure. There's no even, there's really no information about it for quite some time. I mean, I understand now that you don't necessarily get it by touching something.
Right.
You can't we used to think, could you get it through your skin? I was in New York at the beginning. So there was just this terror of a lack of information. And I think people go on to these alternative news sites because they somehow are like, I know how to do this. You just rub vitamin C on your nipples and it's good. You're good. I don't know how people think that it's okay that you can do that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess because they want the money. Because then everyone thinks they have the secret information to get healed from COVID or whatever. But all of this fear and terror that's happening.
Well, yeah, that's the appeal of conspiracism in a lot of ways. Of conspiracy theories is they feel incredibly empowering initially, especially sort of in that first rush when you've got secret information nobody else has, and then sort of secondarily you become part of these communities that feel like you're being empowered because I'm being recognized by other people within these communities, and they are actually welcoming me, as opposed to those evil people on the left who just want to make fun of me. So
I have said that campaign finance reform could fix pretty much every problem we have. Now, stick with me. I want to know what you think about this.
Okay.
So we reform our campaign finances and we disallow lobbyists, right? So no revolving door of lobbyists. You cannot necessarily be like a captain of a pharmaceutical industry and, get on the CDC. You have to be a real doctor or something like that, right? No. And therefore, we could rebuild trust in some of these institutions that have been undermined by the corporate interest and the capitalist interest. And if you have places where you can trust, because I'm thinking of one of the conspiracy theories around Dr. Fauci, and it's hard to know if it's right or not. It's very difficult to know who to trust right now because of the corporate profit motive and the corporate interest, and how our elections and our system has been bought out by the corporations in this country. So again, campaign finance reform fixes the problem of, a secondary gain is fixing the problem of conspiracy theories, because there would be, what do you call it? You could see through, you could see transparency in our, in our agencies and stuff. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that campaign finance reform is obviously one of the things that's going to happen before we really kind of restore our democracy. And I think I see it, definitely would see it as part of the package myself. I mean, I think everybody's kind of got a different starting point. My own starting point would be media reform. I don't think we're going to resolve this until we change our media structure in this country and get the profit motive out. And
what would return nationalizes Fox News? Like, how do we do it?
I think I think there are two steps that you have to do. One is that you have to outlaw corporate ownership of media companies, newspapers, and particular newspapers. I mean, one of the real problems that's happened out there in America is that all of these small town papers have dried up. So none of these communities are connected and interconnected in the way that they used to be. Instead, they've all been, all of the little papers out there no longer actually bind the communities together in the way that they used to. That I came up in small community papers back in the late 70s, and I saw that binding effect. And then I saw what happened when those newspapers that I worked for got bought by these corporations. It just utterly destroyed that fabric. But what's happening on those small towns and small communities is actually something that's happening to the nation writ large on a much larger scale. And so I think that the first thing you need to do is outlaw corporate ownership. I think you also need to enforce, basically, if you're going to own media in this company that disseminates information, you can't make any more than 10% profit. Given year. I mean, a lot of what fuels the drive for disinformation and pushing disinformation is profit motive. And the thing that we saw, certainly, that all completely transformed papers in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s was the need to meet corporate shareholders' demands, which were typically profits of 15% and above. And this wound up basically gutting newsrooms and putting all the power in the hands of the publishers and people like that, rather than, I think that media companies have to be prepared to take you shouldn't be raking in piles of dough from doing a democratic public service.
All right. I'm with you. That seems,
So,
yeah, second
so,
nature.
so for me, yeah, I would go with media reform, but I think, I think there are a lot of approaches we can
We
take.
could have a multi-pronged
Yeah. Yes.
approach.
But
David,
but but ultimately, yeah, I think at the end of the day, if we want to get people out of these rabbit holes and have start ending the pandemic of disinformation that we're wash in, I think that we need to be able to. I think it actually has to happen on a one-to-one basis, and there has to be somebody that you actually have a relationship with, and you're able to pull them out of these rabbit holes through the use of basically your relationship with them to draw them out and get them back to sort of a normal
I
worldview.
feel like that's what we do with this show is to the best of our ability. It's like,
yes,
actually, here's a regular world. Here's some reality.
Well, it would be good, but I mean, a lot of it. One of the first things you got to realize is that throwing facts and logic at a conspiracy theory believer is not only utterly useless, it's actually positively counterproductive.
Let's discuss. Tell me more about why it's counterproductive.
Because immediately you lose the ability to change that person as soon as that happens, because they immediately see you as either another conspirator or a hapless sheeple who's too stupid to recognize the great knowledge that they're trying to impart.
That happens to me many times. Yes. So true.
So if you're going to actually undertake the process of trying to pull someone out of the rabbit holes, first you have to decide whether it's worth it, because a lot of the times it's personally hazardous. It's also a huge amount of time.
It is a huge amount of time to get one person out of the rabbit hole.
Yeah, it does, and it's and at the end of the day, you may not succeed. The chances of success are 50-50 probably.
David,
it just depends on whether the person's worth it to you. So if a person's worth it to you, absolutely you can take these steps. But the first thing you do is you basically take an empathetic stance. You listen to them, and the key thing is to try to get them to talk and explain what it is that motivates them to buy these conspiracy theories. What's the underlying motivation for them? And then once you get there, then you can start figuring out ways to talk about those motivations in a rational way, rather than meeting these needs through the adoption of bizarro world conspiracy theories. And from there you can generally build. So
that's hopeful.
Yeah.
The one-on-one, I'm thinking about the effect that this will have on democracy as these conspiracy theories tend to spread, and the effect they have on, the ability to meet the needs of the day, the pandemic response, climate emergency response. Can you talk a little bit about, if this goes on unchecked, what we are looking at in terms of the future effect on our society?
Well, have you seen Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome?
I've seen Idiocracy. I've seen the commercial for that. There's enough for me.
Well, I really think, look, I've been writing this week about how because we're out here in the midst of these forest fires, and you can just see the sort of social breakdown happening because out there in these rural areas, because of Facebook, and to a lesser extent Twitter, but Facebook's been a platform for all these people to spread these claims that Antifa has been setting these forest fires. So you have armed militiamen going out in these rural areas and setting up citizens checkpoints and stopping people. They're armed with AR-15s and stuff. So you better stop. You're going to
slow it down. You're going to slow down that hatchback.
Yeah, and whatever you do, don't wear your Black Lives Matter shirt out there.
Yeah,
because they will turn you around and tell you to get the fuck out of here. Which is what actually happened to several journalist friends of mine.
Wow,
who were out there trying to cover this stuff. And so, yeah, and I wrote about it at Daily Kos. By the way, we should mention that I'm a staff writer at Daily Kos, and you can read my work there.
Yes. Well, that is where I read your work. Mostly where
yeah, I know.
It's new and exciting. But
well, it's great. Yeah, Kos has been a great place to work because they let me do what I need to do, and they give me all the support in the world. So they've been a terrific outfit to go to work for. Anyway,
no, that's good. We should click them. They're reasonable, rational people that are fabulous.
Yes, they are. They actually are. They're lovely people for the most part. So, yeah, it's so. But at any rate, yeah, and I have been writing about this quite regularly, and honestly, I'm really concerned.
Yeah, we're really.
I'm concerned about what's going to happen after the election.
The Northeast, there's still, more there. It's out here too, but
I think we're going to have a real problem after the election. I think we're going to have a real serious problem. I don't think these folks are going to accept that he was defeated, and I don't think Trump's going to accept it either. I think there's going to be lawsuits. I think there's going to be a lot of indecision, and then we have the sort of corporate news structure led by Fox, which will deliberately muddy the waters and confuse people even further on the question of whether he was actually. I mean, because I'm pretty sure he's going to lose the popular election by a substantial amount, and the only way he's going to be able to hang on to the presidency is through these lawsuits in some of the swing states, where he's going to claim that mail-in ballots are illegitimate and that sort of thing.
What about if he declares martial law?
Protests. There's going to be protests. Yeah, there's going to be protests. There's going to be. I don't know that he'll declare martial law. I think he might invoke the Insurrection Act. Because there are going to be protests when he tries to hang on, and then we're going to see all these. I mean, we've already seen it here in Portland and in Kenosha, the guns coming out and people shooting each other. So and these militiamen are well, I know that I have been covering things in Portland for a long time, and I'm certainly not sympathetic to the Patriot Prayer guys, but I don't think we want anybody getting shot. I don't think there should be any violence, and I really think that it has to end. I think we need to dial this dynamic down somehow, but instead we're spiraling upward to the point where I think after the election there's going to be a lot of violence. And I think a lot of it's going to be fueled by conspiracy theories and this epistemic crisis, because Donald Trump isn't going to let people accept his defeat. And I think there's going to be a lot of people out there who aren't going to accept it. The people who believe he was elected by God.
David, I thought this was going to be hopeful. You're like, fucking.
No, fight. No, this is all about. I tell people this stuff so we can be prepared to fight, and we also need to be prepared for it. We need to be thinking about smart ways to deal with it in ways that can actually resolve the problem rather than worsen it. Because I'm afraid if we go into it unprepared, things are just gonna spiral upward.
So how long do I have to take lessons on how to shoot an
AR-15?
Join a militia. I mean, Jesus Christ, this is really something.
Yeah.
I mean, the world is crazy. I don't want to kind of go backwards in this conversation, but I feel like I skipped over something that I thought was important. And I do appreciate that you're staying over the time that, we thought you'd be able to be here. This is just your expertise in these matters is very highly valuable. So I appreciate it. You examine in your book the growing appeal of these theories and the kind of personalities that are attracted to the paranoid, sociopathic messages. Can you talk about the kind of, what is it in people's personalities that you have found that makes them attracted to these theories?
Well, the main thing is the underlying dynamic again is authoritarianism. There are authoritarian personalities types, and that's the people who I've found are absolutely the most susceptible to conspiracism, because authoritarian personality types engage in compartmentalized thinking, where it's possible to believe two completely contradictory things at the same time.
That's the thing. That's why if you talk to them with logic, they'll be like, okay, but also that just feeds my thing. They twist everything to feed their own way.
That's right. Well, they work on and they live on what I would call sort of gut level narratives, where they believe this stuff because it feels good to them. This is what they want to believe, and so the more that you feed them things that they want to believe, then the more they build up this belief system that's actually fundamentally false. It's it's the old thing with Stephen Colbert, where remember Colbert used to say, reality has a well-known liberal bias.
When I think of authoritarian personality types, are we talking about people who, if given the chance for power, they would become authoritarians themselves? Or are we also talking about people who just follow?
They're followers. Yeah, no, right-wing authoritarians are primarily the foot soldiers. They're very susceptible to the leadership of these authoritarian leaders, and authoritarian leaders actually have a very distinct personality type. Instead of, we call right-wing authoritarianisms, we use RWA as the abbreviation for that. And the
bootlickers, says one of my here in the Twitch chat.
Well, there is that. There is some of that, but they don't always necessarily behave in a bootlicking way. Of course, what the three components of authoritarian personalities are, authoritarian submission, where you are the bootlicker and you believe that not only you should submit to the rule of the authoritarian leader, but also everyone else should as well, right? So this is, and then there's this authoritarian aggression, which is aggression directed against anyone who fails to submit appropriately or is considered a fake leader, as in Obama. And then third, they believe in the third component is conventionalism, this idea that they represent, the real America, so those things work in combination. Now,
as I'm thinking about what you're saying, what I'm thinking about is how conditioned people, a majority of the population, is to have that personality. First of all, there's a movement right now in parenting called positive parenting, where you are not just like punishment, authoritarianism, even timeouts are not a thing that you do with kids anymore. It doesn't mean you don't have consequences, but it's a different way of parenting. And it's just these small pockets of people who are doing it, who understand that even authoritarian parenting, which is the way of most parenting, it can cause problems. Then you've got your churches that basically, I was brought up Catholic. They didn't even ask us to read their Bible. They're just like, you don't know anything. Just listen to us and you'll get into heaven and it's all good. Give money. Right. So they're training you to be a personality. Then you've got the education system that's like, sit at this desk all day. There's a teacher. This is what you do, in order to achieve something in the world. There are alternative education systems there now, but usually they're only available to, the moneyed classes. Yeah. How do people maintain their sort of independence from becoming squished into this kind of personality who's susceptible here?
Well, I think everybody actually has authoritarian tendencies. We all want security. I think we all want some kind of safety. So this is part of the appeal of authoritarianism, is that it's something that's actually natural to all of us.
How about a social safety net for safety? Jesus Christ.
Right. But they and that's right. They don't go there. They go to what authoritarian types do is they to go towards a sort of authoritarian system that's led by a single person. And this is where the other personality type comes in. We call it social dominance orientation, SDOs. Social dominance orientation is basically narcissism on steroids.
Mm.
And so Donald Trump really is the apotheosis of this personality type. And these folks don't have a lot in common with right-wing authoritarians, except that they share a lot of the same politics. And the reason they share a lot of the same politics is that they have one important shared value, and that is that both personality types have a very dim view of equality. They see equality as a game for suckers, a game for saps, that basically these are folks who see the world as a zero-sum game. Mm-hmm. And, everything's transactional. And so when Black people gain, then that means white people are losing, that sort of mentality. And that's, and so this is shared disdain for the values of equality and equal play and equal opportunity are really dismissed and viewed with disdain by both groups. And so that's the SDO person leaders really play on that stuff. They try to find those fault lines, and that's how they attract followers. Just as, Donald Trump has basically provided us with a long-standing historical class in how this dynamic operates.
Are there enough of us, David, to combat this?
Yeah. There's many more of us than there are of them. But one of the things you got to understand is that as chaos increases, people's tendency towards authoritarianism increases also, because
everybody wants daddy.
Everybody becomes fearful. Yeah. And a reaction, an embrace of authoritarianism is a pretty natural response in those situations. That's the thing about it, is that I would have said that prior to the rise of Trump, we had probably, I would guess that, about 25% of the voting public out there was right-wing authoritarianism or right-wing authoritarians. And I would say that maybe, actually, probably closer to 20%, but he tapped into them very effectively. But I think that during the Trump years, he's actually vastly increased that base by creating so much chaos that people are even more authoritarian now than they were when he was elected. So I think that, we're looking at about 35% of the country now would be, I think, pretty close to what you call a right-wing authoritarian personality.
Oh my. So, we don't want to make the mistake of saying, okay, don't trust these authoritarians, but trust the rest of the government or trust the democratic process. What can we still trust here?
Yourself.
Principles?
Yourself. Yeah. You basically follow. First of all, understand that there are things that I just embrace the world of facts and how facts operate, and be assiduous. These are old standards that they go back, science and logic and reason. These are all things that you can do. And as much as we can, I think we need to understand that facts can be bent by partisan desires, and it's just important to try to embrace actual facts for their own sake, and stop rejecting. The look. Ultimately, you're going to have to rely on other people for information, right? So,
because you weren't there for everything.
You can't be there for everything. Right. So you need to figure out who you can trust, who are the writers you can trust, and who are the media outlets you can trust. And even then, you can't trust them 100% because everybody makes mistakes. Everybody gets things wrong. And this is just a basic fact. I mean, a lot of what people have been mad at the New York Times about for years is just stuff that comes with journalism, because sometimes the paper is going to write and do things that you don't like. Sometimes they're going to handle things badly. Sometimes, I mean, journalists are human and they make mistakes.
I get that. But
including
I'll
the
never
editor.
forgive the New York Times for lying us into that war. I mean, it's hard to do that. And they haven't apologized. If they have,
no, I agree. No, I don't think they
apologize and take responsibility for their mess ups, then people would be more likely to trust them.
Yeah, but they've actually gotten worse, and particularly during the Trump years. I think that they've done a really poor job of figuring out how to
kiss his ass and cover him in a way that's useful. Yeah.
So,
well, here we are.
But look,
we're living through it.
You know, so use your sense. Basically, use some rigor in your own life. That's ultimately the sort of bottom line. Have some rigor in terms of what you believe and what you don't believe. Demand factuality, demand logic and evidence behind the things you believe, and don't go for things just because they feel good, because a lot of folks do that. We're
speaking with David Neiwert, writer at the Daily Kos. So you can follow his more regular writings there, Daily Kos. And he's also the author of the new book, Red Pill, Blue Pill, an antidote to the conspiracy theories that are killing us. What a great title. I'm sure just a little bit of hope in that title is enough to sell 1 million of them, I hope for you. And I hope for the rest of us too. Thanks for joining us, David. I appreciate it so much.
You bet. It was a pleasure seeing you, Julianna.
Nice to see you too. And, it's not a secret that we know each other from 100 network patiences and from me following you on your whale
and hanging out in Friday Harbor together.
Out in Friday Harbor. My heart is with Friday Harbor right now. What with all this?
Say hi to Paul and your little one for me, by the way.
I will. Thanks. All right. Take care, David. Thanks so much.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.
If you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, please, and leave us a comment, which I do read occasionally. Actually, I read a lot of them. You're not supposed to, but I do. Follow act.tv across platforms. On Twitter, on Facebook, Instagram. We're all over the place trying to fight the propaganda war and the war of facts. So follow if you can.